Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're your shortcut to getting informed on complex topics. We sift through the sources so you don't have to.
That's right.
Today, we're tackling something absolutely fundamental: how governments manage their money. Public finance. And it's not just some dry economic theory, is it? It really gets to the heart of what government does and how it affects, well, you.
Absolutely. Our mission today is to really distill the key insights from the sources we've looked at, specifically on public finance in India. We want to give you that shortcut to understanding what really matters here.
Okay, so let's maybe start at the beginning. What does a government actually do? Historically, it was pretty focused.
Yeah, traditionally, governments were mainly about what we call obligatory functions, the essentials.
Like national defense, keeping law and order,
Yes.
that kind of thing.
Exactly. Protecting
Right.
borders, maintaining internal stability, the non-negotiables.
But that's changed massively, hasn't it? Modern governments do so much more.
Oh, profoundly. They've moved way beyond those basics into what are called optional functions.
Okay, like what?
Think education, healthcare for everyone, social safety nets like pensions, all the things that contribute to social welfare and development.
And all that. That costs money. Lots of it.
Precisely. And that brings us right to public finance. It's essentially the study of the government's income and spending, how it raises money and how it spends it, at all levels, really. Central, state, local.
Public means the government representing everyone.
Correct. The collective.
And finance is just income and expenditure.
That's the core of it. As one economist, Hugh Dalton, put it, it sits sort of on the borderline between economics and politics, which feels right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that's really interesting is how different this public finance is from private finance, like managing your own household budget.
They seem similar on the surface maybe, but they operate on fundamentally different principles.
Let's talk about objectives first. When you manage your money, you're looking out for yourself, your family, private interests.
Right. Maximizing your own benefit, essentially. But the government, its aim is supposed to be broader maximum social advantage, what benefits society as a whole.
That's a huge difference. And it affects how they plan spending, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Most people, you figure out how much income you have, then you decide what you can spend.
Right. Income first.
Governments often do it the other way around. They identify the expenditure needed, maybe a big infrastructure project or a health program, and then they work out how to get the funds.
Which they can do partly because their credit status is so different.
Exactly. Governments can usually borrow much, much larger sums than any individual ever could. They have high creditworthiness in the market.
Plus the big one, they control the money supply to an extent.
Well, specifically, the government, through the central bank, the Reserve Bank of India in this case, has the unique right to print currency. That's something you and I definitely can't do.
Definitely not. And that gives public finance way more elasticity. Is that the right word?
Yeah, elasticity. Governments can adjust their income more easily, relatively speaking. They can change tax laws, borrow significantly. Private finance is much more constrained.
And the impact is just on a different scale. My spending habits barely register nationally. Government decisions.
Huge impact.
Yeah.
Tremendous. They shape the entire national economy. It's a massive lever.
Okay, so we've got a sense of what public finance is and why it's different. Let's dig into its structure. You mentioned 5 components.
That's right. The main areas are public expenditure, public revenue, public debt, fiscal policy, and financial administration.
Let's start with the spending side, public expenditure.
Okay, so public expenditure is just all the money spent by public authorities, government at all levels. It covers protecting citizens, providing for collective needs, and increasingly promoting economic and social welfare.
And this has changed over time, too.
Big time. We went from that sort of laissez-faire idea where government did as little as possible.
Keep spending down.
Right. To the modern era where governments are actively involved in development, in welfare. And that shift is really why we see government spending grow so much.
Makes sense. And I guess we need ways to categorize all this spending, right? It's not all the same.
Exactly. A key distinction is between revenue expenditure and capital expenditure.
Okay, what's the difference?
Revenue expenditure is for the day-to-day running of things. Think administration costs, government salaries, pensions, the ongoing operational stuff.
Got it. And capital expenditure.
That's more about long-term investment and development. Big infrastructure projects, roads, dams, things like that, or even repaying government loans. It's building assets for the future.
Okay. Are there other ways to classify it?
Yeah, we also look at developmental versus non-developmental expenditure.
Developmental sounds productive.
It is. It's spending that directly contributes to economic growth, creating jobs, increasing production. Think health, education, research and development.
And non-developmental.
That's spending that doesn't have a direct productive impact. Necessary sometimes, but not directly growth-oriented, like general administration costs or defense spending, war expenses.
Right. Now, you mentioned spending has grown a lot in India. Can you give us a sense of the scale?
Oh, it's staggering. If you look at the figures, say, from the Economic Survey, back in 1991-92, total public expenditure was around 72,000 crore rupees.
Okay.
By 2018-19, it was over 17 lakh crore rupees.
Wow. That's an incredible jump.
It really is an exponential kind of growth. It reflects that changing role of government we talked about.
So what's driving this? Why does public spending keep going up and up, especially in developing countries like India?
Well, there are quite a few reasons. A big one is simply the increase in government activities. Governments are just doing more education, health, social welfare programs.
More responsibilities.
Exactly. Then there's population growth. A rapid increase in population just means more people needing services.
More schools, more hospitals.
Right. And growing urbanization is another factor. Cities need huge investments in water, roads, sanitation, schools.
Defense spending too, I imagine.
Yes. Increasing defense expenditure is often a big item, especially with, unstable international relations. It costs money even in peacetime.
And democracy itself.
The spread of democracy actually adds costs too. Regular elections, the whole administrative machinery involved.
Huh, interesting. What else?
Inflation is a constant pressure. The cost of everything the government buys, goods, services, salaries, tends to rise over time.
Just like for households.
Pretty much. Then you have active efforts towards industrial development, supporting industries, creating infrastructure, and sadly, disaster management, coping with floods, earthquakes, other calamities, both natural and man-made. That requires significant, often unexpected expenditure.
Okay, so that's the spending side constantly growing due to many pressures. Now, how does the government pay for all this? Let's talk public revenue.
Right, the other side of the coin. Public revenue is basically all the income the government collects from various sources. And it needs this revenue precisely because of that public expenditure we just discussed.
And the main sources are taxes, mostly.
Taxes are a huge part, yes. But there's also non-tax revenue. Let's tackle taxes first, though.
Okay. What exactly is a tax?
Fundamentally, it's a compulsory contribution you make to the government. It's not optional.
Right.
And it's meant to be used for the common good, for society's benefit. Crucially, when you pay a specific tax, you don't get a direct specific benefit back in proportion to what you paid.
Okay, so it's not like buying a service directly.
Exactly. And taxes can be levied on income, on property, on goods, on services, lots of things.
Yeah, I remember reading about Adam Smith and his ideas on taxation.
Are they still relevant?
Oh, absolutely. His canons of taxation from the 18th century are still incredibly relevant benchmarks for good tax policy.
What are they?
There are four main ones. First, the canon of equity or equality taxes should be fair, based on people's ability to pay. Makes sense.
Second, the canon of certainty. Taxpayers should know exactly how much tax they need to pay, when, and in what form. No arbitrary surprises.
Clarity is key.
Third, the canon of convenience. Paying the tax should be made as easy and convenient as possible for the taxpayer.
Right.
And fourth, the canon of economy. The cost of actually collecting the tax shouldn't be excessive compared to the amount of revenue it brings in. Efficiency matters.
Those seem like pretty solid principles. Hard to argue with.
They are, but achieving all of them perfectly is always a balancing act for governments.
Okay, so within taxes, there are different types, right? Direct and indirect.
That's the main classification, based on who ultimately bears the burden or the incidence of the tax.
So a direct tax.
That's one where the burden falls directly on the person or entity it's levied on. It can't easily be shifted to someone else. Think personal income tax, or corporation tax, or wealth tax. The person who gets the tax bill pays it.
And these can be structured differently, progressive, and so on.
Yes. Direct taxes, especially income tax, are often progressive, meaning the tax rate increases as income increases. They can also be proportionate, a flat percentage, or even regressive, hitting lower incomes harder as a percentage, though that's generally seen as undesirable.
Okay. And indirect tax.
With indirect taxes, the initial liability might be on one person, say a manufacturer or seller, but they can typically shift the burden onto someone else, usually the final consumer, by including it in the price of goods or services.
So it gets passed along.
Exactly. The classic examples are things like sales tax, excise duties, customs duties, and the big one in India now, the goods and services tax, GST.
Right, GST. That was a massive change. Let's talk about that. It came in July 2017.
Yes, July 1st, 2017. It was a landmark reform.
Mhm.
The idea was to replace a whole mess of existing indirect taxes, both central and state level.
Like what? What did it replace?
Oh, things like central excise duty, service tax, additional duties of customs, state VAT, value-added tax, entertainment tax, entry tax, a whole patchwork quilt of different taxes.
So the goal was simplification.
Simplification and unification, creating one nation, one tax, one market.
And how is this structured? CGST, SGST.
Right. For transactions within a state, you have two components. CGST, central GST, goes to the central government, and SGST, state GST, goes to the state government. For transactions between states, there's IGST, integrated GST, which is collected by the center but then apportioned. There's also a compensation cess levied on certain goods initially to compensate states for any potential revenue loss.
Okay. And what were the hoped-for benefits of this huge shift?
Well, the list was pretty ambitious. Creating that unified national market was key, making it easier to do business across state lines.
Boost trade within India.
Exactly. Also, potentially boosting foreign investment and the Make in India initiative by having a clearer, simpler tax structure, harmonizing laws, simplifying procedures.
Reducing compliance costs for businesses.
That was a major aim. Plus, the hope was it would boost exports, make manufacturing more competitive, improve the overall investment climate, maybe even lead to lower final prices for consumers due to reduced cascading effects of taxes.
And potentially help with poverty reduction.
That was the long-term hope, yes. By boosting the economy, creating jobs, and generating more resources for the government.
It sounds great on paper. How did the rollout go?
Well, like any massive reform, there were definitely teething problems. Businesses had to adapt to new systems, new compliance rules. It was complex, especially initially. But the long-term goals remain those big-picture economic benefits.
Okay. So that's taxes. What about the other side? Non-tax revenue.
Right. This is income the government gets that isn't from taxes. It comes in various forms.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Okay, so you have fees. These are payments for specific services the government provides, like education fees, registration fees, court fees.
Oh, you pay for a direct service.
Kind of, yes. Then there are prices of public goods and services. Think railway fares, postal charges, charges for electricity or water supply from public utilities. You also have special assessments. This is a bit different. It's a payment made by residents of a particular area for a specific benefit or improvement they receive, like better roads or drainage in their locality.
Ah, like a local improvement charge.
Sort of. Then there are fines and penalties. These are imposed for breaking laws. The main aim is deterrence, not really revenue generation, though they do bring in some income.
Right. Punishment, not profit.
Exactly. Governments can also receive gifts, grants, and donations. This could be from citizens, organizations, or even foreign aid from other countries or international bodies. But this source can be uncertain.
Unpredictable.
Very. There are also special levies. These are often taxes imposed on goods considered harmful, like alcohol or tobacco. The primary goal might be to discourage consumption rather than maximizing revenue.
Like a sin tax.
Precisely. And finally, a very important one for modern governments, borrowings, raising loans.
Ah, yes. Debt, which you mentioned as another pillar.
Exactly. Borrowing is a major source of funds when expenditure exceeds other revenues, which brings us neatly to public debt.
Okay, so public debt. Why do governments borrow? Is it just because spending is higher than income?
That's the main reason, yes. When there's a budget deficit expenditure exceeding revenue, governments often need to borrow to cover the difference. It's very common, especially for funding large development projects or during economic downturns.
And where do they borrow from?
Broadly, there are two main types based on the source: internal debt and external debt.
Internal means borrowing from within the country.
Correct. From its own citizens, commercial banks, financial institutions, the central bank, it's denominated in the country's own currency.
And external debt.
That's borrowing from outside the country, from foreign governments, international banks, or global institutions like the IMF or the World Bank. This is usually in foreign currency.
And I imagine managing external debt is more complex.
Yeah.
Currency risk and all that.
Definitely. There are different considerations: exchange rate fluctuations, conditions attached to loans, impact on foreign reserves. Internal debt has its own dynamics, affecting domestic interest rates and money supply.
Okay, so we have spending, revenue, debt.
Mm.
How does the government actually manage all this to influence the economy? That's fiscal policy.
That's fiscal policy in a nutshell. It's the government's toolkit for using its spending levels and tax rates to monitor and influence the nation's economy, achieving goals like growth, stability, employment. It's about the strategic use of public expenditure, revenue, and debt.
It's the steering wheel, in a way.
A very powerful steering wheel, yes.
And making sure all this actually happens smoothly, that's financial administration.
Exactly. Financial administration is about the practical implementation. How do you efficiently manage revenue collection, control expenditure, handle debt, and importantly, prepare and execute the government budget? It's the operational machinery.
The budget. That seems like the central piece here.
It absolutely is. The government budget is the key instrument of financial administration. It's basically a detailed financial plan for the upcoming year.
Like an annual report card, but
Yeah.
looking forward.
Kind of. It shows the government's expected income receipts and its proposed spending expenditures for the next financial year. In India, that's April 1st to March 31st.
And it's legally required.
Yes, Article 112 of the Constitution mandates the presentation of this annual financial statement to Parliament. Fun fact. The word budget apparently comes from the old French word budget, meaning a small leather bag or wallet, which finance ministers historically used to carry their financial proposals.
Huh. Okay. So what's actually in the budget? Is it just one big list?
It's usually broken down. The two main components, especially for the central budget, are the revenue budget and the capital budget.
Ah, like the expenditure classifications we talked about earlier.
Exactly. The revenue budget deals with the short-term operational side. It includes revenue receipts, that's your tax revenue, like income tax, GST, and non-tax revenue, like fees, dividends. And it includes revenue expenditure, the day-to-day running costs, interest payments on debt, subsidies.
Okay, the ongoing stuff.
Right. Then the capital budget deals with the long-term assets and liabilities. It includes capital receipts, like money raised from loans, public borrowing, RBI loans, foreign loans, or selling off government assets, divestment. And it includes capital payments or expenditure funding for big infrastructure projects, investments, loans given to states.
So revenue budget is like the operating account. Capital budget is like the investment account.
That's a pretty good analogy, yes. One tells you about the government's current operations, the other about its long-term financial health and investments.
Now, I've heard about different types of budgets: balanced, surplus, deficit. What do those mean?
They describe the relationship between the government's total estimated revenue and its total estimated expenditure for the year.
So a balanced budget is?
Revenue equals expenditure. Income exactly matches outgoings. Classical economists like Adam Smith thought this was ideal neutral, fiscally responsible.
But maybe not always practical.
Well, for modern governments aiming for welfare and development, rigidly sticking to a balanced budget every single year might hinder their ability to respond to economic needs, especially during downturns.
Okay. What about a surplus budget?
That's when estimated revenue is greater than estimated expenditure. The government takes in more than it spends.
Is that good?
It can be useful particularly during times of inflation. By taxing more than spending, the government can pull money out of circulation, reducing purchasing power and helping to cool down rising prices.
An anti-inflation tool.
Yes. But if the economy isn't overheating, running a surplus budget could actually slow things down too much, potentially leading to unemployment. So it's context dependent.
Right. Which leaves the deficit budget, which sounds like the most common one.
It generally is, especially for modern developing economies like India. A deficit budget is when estimated expenditure exceeds estimated revenue. The government plans to spend more than it takes in through regular receipts.
And it covers the gap by borrowing.
Primarily, yes. Through borrowing, or sometimes what's called deficit financing. This approach is considered particularly useful during an economic depression or recession.
How so?
By deliberately spending more, injecting money into the economy, perhaps through infrastructure projects or increased welfare payments, the government can boost aggregate demand, stimulate economic activity, create jobs, and hopefully pull the economy out of the slump.
So it's a tool to kickstart growth when things are slow.
Exactly. It's a key tool of countercyclical fiscal policy. But of course, running deficits year after year leads to accumulating public debt, which has its own long-term implications to manage.
It sounds like the budget is incredibly important then. It's not just numbers on a page.
Absolutely not. The importance of the budget is immense. It affects everyone. Taxes impact your disposable income, business profits, government spending choices on defense, infrastructure, health, education. These directly shape the economy and citizens' quality of life.
It's where policy becomes reality.
Precisely. The budget is the main vehicle for implementing the government's economic policies. It influences production, how income is distributed, how the country's resources are used. It's a statement of priorities with real-world consequences.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. From the basic functions of government and how public finance differs from private, through the details of spending and revenue, including that deep dive into GST public debt, fiscal policy, and finally, the central role of the budget itself.
It's a complex system, but understanding these core principles really does give you a powerful lens, a way to understand the economic decisions shaping India and the world around you. It helps make sense of news headlines, government actions, and societal challenges.
Absolutely. It connects the dots between policy and everyday life. So as we finish up, here's something for you, our listener, to think about. We've seen this almost relentless growth in public spending, and we know deficit budgets are common, especially in developing economies. So the question is, what are the real long-term consequences of this for future generations? And how can government strike that difficult balance between providing essential welfare and ensuring long-term economic stability? What different strategies might they use?
That's a crucial question, something definitely worth pondering.
Food for thought. Keep digging, keep exploring. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.